Hello everyone, I hope you all are doing fine. And guess what? Today we are going to continue our session on steps of research. And today we're going to talk about one of the important steps in research, which is data collection. And also we'll talk about data analysis. So I hope you all are ready. Right. When we talk about collecting data, it's like going on a treasure hunt where you're gathering all kinds of information based on what you want to find out or prove. Right. Imagine you have got some cool questions or guesses, which is your hypothesis, right, about something you're studying. To get answers, you need to pick up clues and pieces of information, and which will be your data, right, and in a very organized manner. Now, how you're going to use this information and what is going to tell you depends a lot on the methods and tools you choose for your data hunt, right? It's like choosing the right kind of net for catching butterflies. You gotta pick the one that suits what you're after. Right, and here's the thing. You can't just grab any old data. You want the good stuff, right? A good data that's clear, straight up, and trustworthy. Think about what kind of data you need. Is it numbers or observation or interviews or surveys, right? Your choice here is super important because it shapes what kind of answers you'll get. Once you have decided on your method, it's all about keeping your data clean and consistent. Imagine your data as a piece of a puzzle. If they are all over the place or don't fit well, you won't see the full picture, right? So you have got to be like a detective, keeping their evidence neat and organized. If you skip steps or mix things up, your cake, or in this case, your research, won't turn out right. And so keep it transparent, which means to be clear about how you're collecting your data and why. This way, everyone can understand and trust your research result. Right, so let me start. As you can see, we have quantitative data collection, qualitative data collection, and mixed data collection. We'll talk about one by one. So we'll begin with quantitative data collection, right? So think of quantitative data like stuff you can count or measure. Remember that important keyword, number or count or measure, right? If you love graphs and doing maths, this is kind of your zone. This type of data helps you to answer questions like how many or how much. And it's perfect for testing your guesses, which is hypothesis, right? And for example, if you're curious about how much money a lemonade stand makes, what you'll do, you'd look at the revenue in dollars, right, or rupees. Or if you're checking out how tall your classmates are, you'd measure their height in feet or inches. Other examples include finding out the average age of gamers in your school, measuring the length of your classroom in centimeters, or finding out the distance from your house to the mall in kilometers. So these all are quantitative data collection. We already talked about in detail about quantitative data in our previous session that you should go and check on. Right, next is qualitative data collection. Now let's think of this, like a cousin of quantitative data. It's all about words, feelings, and experiences. Think of it like a storytelling with data. Instead of crunching numbers, what you're doing here, you're looking at what people say and do to understand their experiences better. For instance, if you're doing a project on how students feel about homework, you might read diary entries or conduct interviews, right? And want to understand the history of your school, right? Dive into old documents and paragraphs. You can also record videos or audios of people talking about their experiences, then write down what they said. And that's called transcription also, and it also includes in qualitative data collection. So in a nutshell, quantitative data is kind of your go-to for everything needs precise or measurement and stats, while qualitative data is perfect for exploring thoughts, feelings, and experiences in a more detailed and descriptive way. And both are like super important in research depending on what you're curious about. Next, we have mixed method research, right? Imagine you're trying to understand why your favorite song is popular. What you're gonna do, you could count on how many times it's been played, right? And that's your quantitative part. right, which dealing with numbers, right? And you could also ask people why they like it. So that's the qualitative part of focusing on descriptions and words. So mixed methods and mixed research is just like that. It mixes numbers and with personal stories and opinions to give a fuller picture. The companies like Spotify, Airbnb, and Lyft or Uber use this method to get the best of both worlds. They get numbers that show trends and personal insights to understand why those trends happens. Right, so that was all about different types of data that we can collect. Right, and now let's talk about what is primary and secondary data. It's very important. We already talked briefly in our previous session. Here we're gonna discuss more. So primary data is like, being a detective collecting clues by yourself. Primary data is information you gather straight from the source. It should be fresh and new, like an interview with someone or survey you conduct or an experiment you run. You could watch people in a mall for a study on shopping habits, right? So that will be your observation, right? Or you could ask a bunch of people to fill out a questionnaire about their favorite ice cream. This data is super direct and usually accurate. So, but it can take a lot of time and effort to collect, and sometimes people might not give you the whole truth, right? So, in the secondary data, what happens? Now, imagine you're writing a report on the history of video games. Right. But instead of interviewing every game developer out there, you use books, articles, and documentaries already made on the topic. That's using your secondary data. That is called secondary data. It's information someone else collected. It's like standing on the shoulders of giants. You're building on a work that's already been done, right? And this can be a real time saver also. And it's a very, often reliable since it's usually collected by your pros, right? And but remember, you're not the first to use this information, so it's not as fresh as primary data. So to sum it up, mixed methods research is like making a smoothie with both quantitative data and qualitative data. You get a balanced diet of information, and primary data is like growing your fruits and veggies in your garden. It's a lot of work but very rewarding, right? And on the other hand, secondary data is like buying them from a store. Easier, but you didn't grow them yourself, right? So that is all about primary and secondary data, guys. For example, you can see here in secondary data collection, it could be magazines, newspapers, books, or journals, right? And in primary data collection, interviews, surveys, questionnaires, experiments, observation, focus group, document, all these are important. Sometime in your exam they ask about primary and secondary data. So I hope it is clear. Now next we'll move quickly to another important thing in data collection, which is data management plan, right? So before we dive into gathering our data, let's chat about how we are going to keep everything organized and safe. Think of it like planning a big road trip. You wouldn't just jump in the car without a map, right? So let's map out our data journey. First thing first, we need to decide how we are going to store all the information we collect, right? This is kind of super important because we don't want to end up with a messy pile of data that doesn't make sense, right? It's like keeping your music or photos in neat folders on your phone. It just makes life way easier. Now, if we are going to be collecting information from people, we have got to be really careful with their personal details, right? I'm talking about stuff like names or ID numbers. We don't want to accidentally, share someone's private information. So we'll make sure to keep it anonymous. It's like being a secret keeper. We respect people's privacy, right? And these days in social media, it's not happening. People are selling data, right? But anyway, that's the another topic of a day, but we'll talk about maybe in some of our sessions. But by the way, let's talk about how we'll handle the data we gather from interviews or surveys. Well, if you're using good old fashioned pencil and paper, we need to be super systematic when we transfer that information into a computer. Imagine you're translating a cool song into another language, right? You'd want to keep the original vibe, right? Same with our data. We want to keep it accurate and not lose the essence. Last but not least, we've got to protect our data like it's a treasure chest. We'll set up a backup system that regularly, saves our work. Think of it as having a lifesaver while swimming. If something goes wrong, like our computer crashes, we don't lose all our hard work, right? It's like having a backup parachute when skydiving. Better safe than later sorry, right? So that's our game plan. Let's stay organized, respect privacy, be accurate in our data handling, and back up everything. And doing all this will make our research journey smooth and successful, right? So that was all about data management plan, guys. Now let's talk about data analysis. Quite important steps that you should really know about it. And here I'm gonna go through all the points that you can see over your screen, like data requirements and the data collection, then processing, then it's cleaning, then exploratory, and all these steps like algorithm, mathematics, then data product, and at the end we'll talk about communication also. So all these stuff is kind of super important in data analysis, right? So imagine you have got a big puzzle, right? And you want to understand what picture it forms, right? That's kind of like data analysis, but instead of puzzle pieces, what you have your data, and that's what you have to figure out, right? So first you see data requirement. It's like what you need, right? Think of this as your shopping list. Before you start analyzing, you need to know what kind of data you're looking for. This could be numbers like how many hours you spend on your favorite song, or categories like your favorite types of movies, right? Then we have data collection. Now what happens, you go out and gather your data. It's like a treasure hunt. You might do surveys, search the internet, or read books, an article. It's all about collecting those valuable pieces of information. Then what do you do with that information? Well, you process it, right? So the next step is data processing. So once you have got all your data, it's time to organize it, right? You arrange your data in a way that makes sense, usually in rows and columns like a spreadsheet. So that is how you process your data. Next step is very important, data cleaning, right? Sometime you find socks with holes, or a stained shirt in your laundry, right? Similar in data, you might find mistakes, sometimes duplicates, or sometimes missing pieces or missing information, right? So cleaning data is all about those fixing issues so that everything is neat and tidy. So the next thing you do, you explore data analysis, right? And here's where you turn into a detective looking for clues in your data. You explore and play around with the data to see what stories it can tell you. It's a bit like looking for hidden pattern or secrets. Right. So the next is all about that, descriptive research. Now, you know, you start making sense of what you have found, right? You might calculate the average time you spend playing games, or the most common, movie game you watch. It's all about summarizing your findings in a simple way, right? And then we have like, again we have to do like data visualization. This is where you get a little bit more creative and turn your data into graphs, or charts. It's like taking your findings and turning them into a cool infographic or colorful chart that shows what you have discovered, right? Then we have like algorithm, mathematics, formulas, and models. Sometimes you use special tools like mathematical formulas to see how different bits of your data relate to each other. It's like trying to understand if playing more games make you happier, or if watching comedy makes you laugh more. Right? Then we have data product. Imagine you make an app that recommends movie based on what you usually watch. So that's a data product, using your findings to create something practical and cool. So at the end we have communication step, like you get to show off what you have learned, right? You might write a report, make a presentation, or just tell your friends about your awesome finding. It's all about sharing the knowledge you have gained from your data adventure. So guys, there you go. Data analysis is like a going on a big exciting adventure where you collect, sort, clean, explore and share all sorts of information. And the best part, you never know what you're going to discover, right? So that's the beauty of research, and that's the beauty of data analysis. That's the beauty of data collection, right? And so that was all about data analysis, guy. Let me tell you about data measure, right? This is just a fancy way of saying decide how you're going to measure your research stuff. Like if you're studying happiness, how do you measure it? Tell me. Kind of smiles per hour, can you say that? Or number of laughs? But anyway, and it is very important that you should know all these terms like mode, median, and mean. So one of the most important terms in data measure is mode, and it's the number that shows up the most. Like if you're counting favorite ice cream flavors, and chocolate comes up 10 times, that's your favorite, right? And then next is median. Imagine lining up all your numbers from smallest to biggest. So the median is the one chilling right in the middle. If you have an odd number of value, it's easy to spot, right? With an even number, you just take the average of the two middle guys. And mean is what? This is your classic average. Add up all your numbers and divide by how many numbers you have. It's like finding the average height of your class. I hope you understand all these important terms in data measure. Right. Next we have technique of data analysis. Quite important, and let me tell you one by one. So the first is a standard deviation. And what is that? This tells you how spread out your data is around the average mean. Right? If everyone in your class is close to the same height, the standard deviation is low. But if you have got a huge range from really short to basketball players tall, then your standard deviation is high. Then we have another important term, percentage, and this one is easy. It's just how much something makes up of the whole, right? Like what percent of your class loves pizza, or count the pizza lovers, divide by the total number of students and multiply by 100. That's how you'll get the percentage, right? Then we have frequency distribution. Well, this is like organizing your data into neat table or graph, so you can easily see how many times each value pops up, right? It's like taking a head count of who prefers dogs, cats, or sometimes other animals as pets. But that is all about this frequency distribution. Next we'll talk about correlation. So think of correlation as a buddy system, right? Two variables either move together, which is positive correlation, or in opposite direction, which is like negative correlation. Like the more you study, the better your grades are, like so that grades will be your positive. Or the more you spend on video games, maybe the less time you have for your homework, which is like negative correlation, right? So you'll often hear about different types, like Pearson is there, Kendall is there, Spearman, and point biseral, but they are all just ways to measure these kind of system. So you should know all these important names like Pearson, Kendall, Spearman, right? They are represent like correlation. Regression is like detective work to find out what factors really matter, right? It helps you figure out which things like your independent variables have an impact on what you're studying, which is your dependent variable, right? For example, in market research, you might want to see how price and advertising affect sales. Remember, all these methods are tools to help you make sense of your data. Each one gives you a different lens to look at your information and understand what's really going on in your research. So guys, that was all about the technique of data analysis. Next we're going to talk about data visualization. Quite easy to understand because we are going to talk about these tables, graphs, charts, right, and diagrams. So let me tell you what is visualization. So imagine you have got a bunch of numbers or facts, right? That's your data, right? And you need to make sense of it all. Data visualization is like turning those numbers into a cool picture or graph. So it's easier to understand and way more interesting to look at, right? And it's super helpful when you have a ton of data, especially if it's something that changes over time. Like how many hours you spend on your favorite video game each week. Data mapping means deciding how to show your data. For example, in a bar chart, the length of each bar shows how big a number is, right? But watch it out. If the chart looks messy or confusing, it's not going to help anyone, right? So that's why the design is very important. So first we have like tables, line chart, and area chart. Well, tables are like the, grids you use to play Battlefield. They have rows and columns that let you compare stuff easily, right? And they are great for showing lots of detail, but sometimes they can be a bit overwhelming if you just want to see the big picture. Line charts connect the dots with lines, while area charts fill in the space under the line with color, making it look like a mountain range. Right. And next we have like pie chart and a stacked bar. What are these things? Let me tell you, these are all about showing pieces of a whole. Like how much of your day is spent on different activities, sleeping, school, or gaming, or watching movies, all these stuff, right? So pie charts are like pizza slices, and stacked bar, charts are like a layer cake, right? Each layer being a different part of the whole. Next we have histogram. And what is that histogram? Well, they're like bar charts, but the bar touch each other. Remember that. They're great for showing how often something happens, like what grades students get on a test. Right. Next, we have like, heat maps and tree maps. So what is heat maps? These show, where things are happening. For example, a heat map of a website can show which parts people, click the most or visit the most. The hotter the area, the more action it's getting. Next is tree maps. They are like those Russian nesting dolls, but for your data, remember. They use boxes within boxes to show how parts fit into a whole. They're awesome for comparing different things like how much time you spend on different apps on. Right, next is like your scatter plots or diagram. What are these? Well, these helps you to see if two things are related. Like if you're studying more leads to better grades, your plot, your data on a graph and see if the dots line up in kind of any pattern. Next is diagram. Diagrams are the comic books of your data. They use pictures to explain things like how a car engine works, right? Or maybe the parts of a flower. They're great for breaking down complex idea into easy to understand visuals. Right, so there you have it, guys. Data visualization is all about making numbers and facts easy and fun to understand by turning them into cool charts, graphs, and diagrams. It's a bit like being a data detective, finding the best way to uncover and share the secrets, hidden in numbers. Next, we're gonna talk about use of ICT software in data analysis. Very important, but let me tell you the first thing about the quantitative data analysis tools. So you see there are bunch of different software, right? Like devinfo, this is like a superhero database system that's even got the United Nations Development Group's thumbs up. It's fantastic, right, for keeping tabs on human development stuff. Next is like Elki. So Elki is what, a data mining tool but in Java. It's got some nifty data visualization tricks. And then we have like NIME, which is it stands for constant information miner. This one's a super user friendly and it's like a Swiss army knife for data analytics. Next we have Orange. Think of this as your visual programming buddy. It lets you see your data in a cool ways and play around with its stats, data mining, and even machine learning. Right, next we have SPSS, and what is that? This is the statistical package for social science. It's a big deal in the data analysis. Next we have R, and it is by our foundation for statistical computing. It's a big hit in the stats world. Anyway, you just should know the name, that's all. Next we have MATLAB, and this one is a kind of, you know, have like algorithms, matrix, and all these stuffs. We have Microsoft Excel, that you know about it, right? Our good old Excel. You probably, you know, used it before, but it's got some serious data analysis methods also that you can choose. Next is SAS, which stands for like statistical analysis software. It's all about mining, managing, editing, and retrieving data from different sources and then analyzing it. Then we have Graph Pad Prism. So this one is like for creating 2D scientific graphs and doing biostats and all these current, you know, stuff. Anyway, another is Minitab. It has like, you know, Minitab connects to help business keep their data in check, and quality trainer for learning about stats online. So that is all about quantitative data analysis ICT tools. And next we're going to talk about qualitative data analysis. And what is that anyway? First, you see NVivo. And what is that? This is a kind of your go-to for diving into deep, you know, into qualitative data like interviews, surveys, journal articles, and social media. So if you're a kind of, you know, person who likes interview all these stuff, you can use that particular software. Next we have Atlas. And what is that? It's a whiz at helping you break down and analyze qualitative data, whether you're doing qualitative, quantitative, or mixed methods research. So you can use that one also. Next we have like Max QDA, and this software is a kind of pro at handling what both qualitative and mixed method data and multimedia analysis. It's super useful in academy and business. Next we have SPSS, and this text analytic tool is a kind of hit in a market, and especially for the researchers and health researcher, survey company, and pretty much anyone who needs to make sense of kind of text data. So that's what you need. Next we have like, you know, Transana, perfect for when you need to transcribe videos in qualitative research. So guys, that was all about quantitative and qualitative data analysis ICT tools, right? And in our next session, we're going to talk about generalization and interpretation of data. We'll also talk about reporting and evaluating research. And at the end, we'll also talk about communicating the research findings and possibly recommendation. Or maybe we'll also talk about research ethics. So all these things, guys, we'll see in our next session. So stay tuned. If you haven't subscribed the channel, please do it, and of course hit that bell icon so you'll get the notification every time I post video. So guys, have a good day and take care. Bye bye.